All right, let's look at the fifth tool. The fifth tool for moving people to spiritual growth is what we call a campaign. And a campaign, notice the definition there, is an intensive, extended, all-church emphasis involving every age group that focuses on a particular aspect of spiritual growth. Campaigns are the secret sauce of Saddleback Church. They have done more good than anything else we've done in 36 years. The annual spiritual growth campaign is the key to Saddleback growing year after year after year after year after year after year and not going backwards. It's the key to leadership. It's the key to fellowship, to discipleship, and all these different things. This intensive, extended, all-church emphasis for every age group. And it's usually about 6 weeks, sometimes it's 8 weeks, and we've done a couple that are actually 10. But I got the idea, I actually learned the idea of doing a campaign from the communists. I know that's going to surprise you, but in 1963, a man named Douglas Hyde wrote a book called Dedication and Leadership. It was actually recommended to me by Howard Hendricks, who's a professor at Dallas Theological Seminary. And Douglas Hyde was the leader of the Communist Party in England. And he converted to Christ. He became a Christian and became a Catholic. And he wrote a book called Dedication and Leadership, published by Notre Dame Press in 1963, on what the church could learn from the communists. It had nothing to do with theology, nothing to do with doctrine, but it had to do with their methodology of how they made converts in a free society like England. In Poland, where the communists ruled, you had to believe what they said you had to believe. And in this book on dedication and leadership, there's a chapter on the power of the short campaign. And he said that what the communists in England would do in a free country, how they would try to make converts to communism, is every few, couple times a year, they would go out to Hyde Park and they would set up their soapbox and they'd stand up there and they'd preach their values, their doctrine, and pass out the Daily Worker, the communist newspaper. And they would make a bunch of converts. He said we do that for about 6 or 8 weeks. And then we'd pull back and we would consolidate all of the new converts that we had made to communism. And we'd do that for a while. And then we'd go back out and we'd do another short campaign, 6 weeks or 8 weeks, something like that, and then we pull back. And he said this was a powerful thing for us because you can't keep pushing people all the time. You push and then you pull back, then you push and you pull back. And there's ebbs and flows. Now when I read that, 2 explosive bombs went off in my brain. Because in the first place, I knew that in the ministry of Jesus, in his 3.5-year ministry, he has about 7 campaigns where he goes out, takes the disciples into a period of intensive ministry, and they're praying, and they're working, and they're preaching, and they're healing, and then after a while Jesus goes, fellas, you deserve a break today. Let's go to the mountains. And they go to the mountains, and they do retreat. And then they'd go back out in another intensive period of campaign. And they'd have this period of campaign, and they would do ministry, and teaching, and healing, and then they would pull back, let's go to the desert. And we're going over here to where the palms are and the springs. Actually, it's Palm Springs vacation. It's a biblical basis for Palm Springs vacation. And we're going to go to the desert, and now we're going to go back out. And he has about 7 ebbs and flows in 3.5 years of ministry. Any pastor knows you just can't keep the pedal to the metal 365 days a year. Saddleback is built on a couple of what we call the 2 camel humps, which is the pretty much Christmas through Easter, kind of a period like that, and then after the summer, fall, and you put a lot of emphasis on that, but then you back off in the other times. You can't keep people on 100% all the time. So I knew Jesus did that, and then also I knew that in psychology, I read that it takes 6 weeks to develop a new habit. 6 weeks. You have to do something every day for 6 weeks for for it to become ingrained as a habit in your life. It takes about 3 weeks for you to become comfortable with something, doing it every day, and then it takes another 3 weeks for it to actually become a habit in your life. The reason why most Christians do not have a daily quiet time of prayer and Bible study, even though they've been a Christian 10, 20 or more years, is because they've never made it past 6 weeks without missing. What most people do is they'll read their Bible and pray for 2 or 3 days, and then they stop. And then they read their Bible and pray for 2 or 3 days, and they'll journal, and then they stop. And then they do it, and they stop. And that's like rolling up a ball of twine and dropping it. Roll up a ball of twine and drop it. Roll up a ball of twine and drop it. You're not making any progress. You have to do it every day for at least 6 weeks for it to become habitual in your life. Now, character is the sum total of your habits. You can't say you have a habit, you can't say you have the characteristic of faithfulness unless you are habitually faithful. You can't say you're honest unless you are habitually honest. You can't say that you're compassionate unless you are habitually compassionate. It is your habit. I mean, if I would have said to my wife, honey, I will be faithful to you 28 days a month. Partial faithfulness is unfaithfulness. Partial obedience is disobedience. It's not part of your character until it becomes a habit. Your habits form your character, and your character forms your destiny. And you only do that by going through something for about 6 weeks. So I started thinking about, well, if Jesus had these campaigns of short bursts and back, short bursts, and if psychology says it takes these short bursts to get a habit developed, and then I knew this about how we all learn in different ways, some through the eyes, through the ears, through speaking, and through doing. So what if we combined all that in a thing together and focused on one subject? For instance, let's take the idea of faith. And we'll take Hebrews chapter 11. And you'll hear 6 messages on faith. And then you will read a daily devotional on faith for 40 days. And then you, once a week, will memorize a verse on faith. And then you'll go to your small group and you're going to watch a video 6 times on faith, and then you're going to discuss it, and then you're going to have some projects that are actually stretch your faith. As I said, that's like taking a nail and nailing it into the wood. Every time you use a different format, you nail it deeper. Now, that's what a campaign is. Some of the past campaigns we've done at Saddleback, you can see right there on the outline. We've done I Want to Grow campaign was the very first one way back in 1980. And then you can see the ones that we've started over the years and the ones that are even available that your church could do now. In our 36-year history, nothing has produced more life change. Nothing has produced more spiritual growth. Nothing has produced more numerical growth and in small groups and everything else than doing the annual campaign. For instance, in 40 Days of Purpose, let me just give you one example. That was a 6-week campaign. In that one 6-week period, we baptized 671 new believers. We added 1,200 new members in 6 weeks. We increased our worship attendance by 2,000. I'm reading these statistics. We added 1,400 new small groups. We added 2,200 more people started serving in ministry, and we had 3,700 people who, during 40 Days of Purpose, committed to a world mission project. That's astronomical. That's outstanding. It's unbelievable. Now, you don't have that all the time, but you have it in spiritual emphasis, and then you back off, and you spend the time now conserving all of that fruit. And then next year we did 40 Days of Community. This next year, we're going to do one called the Year of Hope. This year we did Mercy, the Miracle of Mercy. And it was a very powerful thing. We always have growth in every area. Growth in giving, growth in attending, growth in serving, growth in sharing. And sometimes we'll have projects at home where the families will make placemats and the families discuss what we're talking about at dinner time. Now, why do these campaigns work? Well, let me just give you real quickly an overview of it. 5 things. These are the 5 transformational components that make a campaign so effective in moving your committed into deeper discipleship. Number 1, unified prayer. Unified prayer. The Bible says, unless the Lord builds a house, he labors in vain that builds it. And so a month of prayer preparation is a good thing before you do a campaign. In November of this year, we're going to start a thing called 40 Days of Prayer, which is simply preparation for our campaign called the Year of Hope. Maybe some of you will want to join us this next year. And so we start with prayer. This is an indispensable ingredient for awakening our hearts. So we build a prayer basis behind it. Number two is concentrated focus. When we do a campaign, everything else, as much as possible in the church, shuts down. We cancel a lot of other events. We have everything focused on the campaign. Every small group does the campaign. Nobody's studying different things. The entire church studies it. All the children study it. All of the youth study it. All of the adults study it. Every worship service focuses on it. The music focuses on it. Church members and programs that we can put off later, we delay for 40 days. Everybody focuses on the same thing. That gives us a powerful punch. Number three is multiple reinforcement. And I've talked to you about this, that we build the campaigns around a weekly worship attendance, a daily quiet time, a daily devotional reading, a weekly small group Bible study, a weekly memory verse, and projects that your small group are going to do. Then we'll throw in some events like a ministry fair or a mission fair, but it's multiple reinforcements. It's all focusing on what we're doing at that time. We did a campaign called Transformation, which talked about transforming 7 different key areas of your life. We did one on Live Your Calling, which is another way of teaching purpose-driven life, on your call to be loved and to love God. That's worship. You're called to belong. That's membership. You're called to become. That's maturity. You're called to bless others. That's ministry. And you're called to be sent. And we're just covering the purposes again in a different way. Multiple reinforcements. Number 4 is behavioral teaching. And each weekend, the message is designed to cause people to actually do something about it. That's why we call it behavioral preaching, where we want people to be doers of the word. And every message in the campaign, there's like a homework assignment. There's a next step where people can act on what they've learned. It may be even a ministry fair or mission fair or something like that. And then the 5th component, this is really important, is what we call exponential thinking. It's really the faith factor, exponential thinking. What is exponential thinking? It is when you, as a church leader, think so big that you are forced to completely depend on God for the results. Because you know you can't reach this goal in your own power. And you think big, and you pray big, and you expect big, and your faith is stretched with exponential thinking. And we call it exponential thinking because you add a 0 to whatever your goal is, which exponentially makes it larger. For instance, if you were going to have a campaign, you say, you know what, we want to start 5 small groups. I think we could start 5 small groups in our church. Well, exponential thinking would be you'd add a 0 to it. You said, what would happen if we tried to start 50? Oh man, there's no way we can do that. Good. Then it can only be done in the power of the Spirit. The first time we did exponential thinking, it was with the 40 Days of Purpose. And we had set a goal to start 300 small groups. That's a ton of groups, but not for Saddleback size. We said 300 small groups, we could do that. And I went home, and one day in my quiet time, the Lord said, Rick, you're not thinking big enough. And what do you mean? So you need to stretch your faith. You need exponential thinking. I said, what's that? He said, add a 0 to it. 3,000 groups? Instead of 300 groups? Nobody's ever done that. Nobody's ever started 3,000 groups in a week. Well, how much do you think I can do? Don't set your goals on what you think you can do, but on what you think God can do. You let the size of your goal be determined by the size of your God. You got a big God, you get a big goal. You got a little God, you got a little goal. You got no God, you got no goal. And so people often say, when they hear about a goal, Saddleback, I say, who do those people think we are? they are. But we know who we are. We're just normal people like everybody else. There are a lot of things we don't have control over. Where we were born, who we were born to, our natural gifts, our abilities. Those are sovereignty factors. But there is one thing you have complete control over. How much you choose to believe God. And that's your choice. And Saddleback has been used by God in ways that were pretty unusual many times, simply because God found a group of people who were willing to believe God for something that other people weren't willing to do for him. Like, we're going to go buy 120 acres in Orange County. That's nonsense. When we set that goal, the land in Orange County in Mission Viejo was $1 million an acre. And we go, well, how much land are you going after? 120 acres, that's what this piece of property is. Are you kidding? Who do you think you are? Wrong question. Not who do we think we are, it's who do we think God is. And God is honored when we do things that cannot be done in the power of the flesh. When you are bound and determined to fail unless God bails us out. And in exponential faith thinking, it adds the faith element into your campaign. We have tapes and kits and things on all of our campaigns that help you understand how to do these 5 factors of unified prayer, concentrated focus, multiple reinforcement, behavioral teaching, or doer of the word teaching, and exponential thinking. If you have never tried a campaign, I would highly recommend if you try 40 Days of Purpose, or maybe Live Your Calling. If you have done 40 Days of Purpose and you haven't done any others, you might want to do 40 Days of Community. Because that one says, God has given us these 5 purposes, but we can only do them in community. We're better together. It's a fellowship builder. All right, we're going to take a break right now, and then we're going to go into the next session on equipping your core for ministry. So let's sing again. Everybody, let's stand.